I'm Leslie Scase, and I'm the author of the Inspector Child Mysteries. And what I want to do is give a writer's perspective on perhaps how we look at ourselves in Welsh history, and particularly with regards to the late Victorian period. So, if I was to conjure up a picture of hansom cabs going through foggy streets, and beneath a gaslight, you'll see a man walking along with a cape, a top hat, with his walking cane tapping against the pavement. We envisage probably one place, and that's Whitechapel in London, because in literature and films, that period is dominated by London. And really, that's down to Sherlock Holmes and the very, very good writing of Arthur Conan Doyle. The notoriety of Jack the Ripper, though frankly, it doesn't even come close to the most prolific serial killers of the age in Britain. And then also, you've also got the fact that the publishing industry is 90% of it is based in and around London. So we see very little in terms of literature for that period outside of that area. So I decided I will write stories that are based in South Wales. And as part of that, I had to reflect on Welsh history and look into the social history of the time. Now, I studied history at A level, and as part of that, we did the Industrial Revolution. And it was compulsory that we studied a section on the curriculum of Welsh history. And all I remember of it was Newport riots, Merthyr riots, coal mines, poverty, and that's about it. And frankly, I found it incredibly boring and tedious, and I think that I was only marginally more interested than my teacher. So there we have it. And of course, it gives a wrong viewpoint. Because was there poverty? Yes. Did coal mining take a big part of it? Yes. Actually, obviously there was a crime, right? There was a heck of a lot of crime, but that was in regard to the rest of Britain as well. It was a very, very dangerous time, very rough time. But there were other aspects to it that we sometimes don't think about, particularly when we think about South Wales. It wasn't all gloom. First of all, there were some fascinating people around. Okay, so you had Marconi sending his first radio message across the waves at Lavernock. You had what was reckoned to be the richest man in the world, the Marquis of Bute, building Cardiff. You had wonderful people that Mabon, the leader of the Welsh coal miners, all very interesting, loads and loads of them, and people also had a lot of fun. So, for example, you did have the rich people. They attended their balls and they danced the polka and the waltz. And you had, if you could afford one, perhaps you're a little bit better off, and you're a young man with a few quid. You'd be buying a straw boater because they'd be worn almost everywhere in the summer months if you could afford one. You had fairs, you'd games. So, for example, in South Wales, you had at the Taffrail Park, which was a prime sporting ground, and they would hold various sports games in the summer. And you had the Victoria's Jubilee and fireworks being set off. There was a lot of gaiety because even the very poor can have a lot of fun. So it's not all doom and gloom. You had a lot of it was an interesting time because you had a lot of inventions. I mentioned Marconi, but for example, one of the first telephone exchanges was in South Wales. The first record shop in Britain was in Cardiff. So X-rays were another thing, they were just coming on. In fact, rather dangerously, they were being used as in party events as a bit of fun by the very rich. So you had that. You had a lot of change. If you imagine, I mean, within 150 years, I can speak about the town of Pontypridd because obviously I've researched that a lot for my books. But the population within 150 years went from about 3,000 to 35,000. And these are all mainly outsiders, so it turned what was primarily a Welsh-speaking town into an English-speaking town. But people didn't just come from England. So they came from Jews fleeing pogroms in Eastern Europe came. People who were just searching for a better life from Ireland. You had people that came from the Ukraine, Scotland, all over the place. So you had people like Otto Faller, who ran the jewellers. He was known as affectionately as Uncle Arthur in later years. So all this created a wonderful mix of people. It was a real melting pot. You didn't have, it kind of made a new social structure. And whereas you might be in a town like Bristol, or city of Bristol that had been in existence, for nearly 2,000 years, or whatever, and everybody knew exactly their place in society. You suddenly had this mix of entrepreneurs coming in from outside. You had the established Welsh gentry that were there, and people making fast money, those that had money to invest. So it was a very interesting place and very cosmopolitan. Obviously, much busier, than it is today. The other things that happened, of course, I mentioned mines. And obviously there were terrible disasters that happened, such as the one at the Albion Colliery, which features in my second book. But we think about the particular Winston Churchill apparently told the troops that they could fire on the miners when that was in the early 20th century. But actually it wasn't the first time that troops had been sent to South Wales. So in 1893, there was a whole holiest strike, and troops were sent in there, both infantry and cavalry. And then again in 1898, when there was a particularly long strike. So things were happening. And what I'm trying to say is that you cannot sort of just block off parts of Welsh history as just being something when nothing much happened, just gloom, poverty, mines, the odd male voice choir, and that's it. It was far more interesting. And certainly for a writer, there's a wealth of things to actually pick upon and use as a theme, as I do myself. And what I like people to do, really, that live in South Wales, is to look around them and not see things as they currently are, but try to imagine them as they were. So again, use the town of Pontypridd. If I look at what used to look at the large bingo hall as you come into Pontypridd out of the station, it's been demolished as part of improvements this year. But I didn't see a bingo hall. What I could imagine was the Royal Clarence Theatre, complete with chandeliers, men in frock coats, an evening dress, sort of dancing the waltz and dancing the polka, ladies in all their finery, because that's what it was. And where I walked down the street, I would know to the right hand side there would have been a music hall with all the various vaudeville type acts that used to go on. So if you look, and if you go down to what is the HSBC Bank, which is now closed, but what I see there is the Butcher's Arms pub with marble pillared bar down beneath, snooker hall above, and then out the back of the Yorkshire Yard. And I think that every town in Wales really, has this. We've got this history, and you should really try and imagine it and try and bring it back to life. And it wasn't, as I say, it wasn't all dour, which is what tends to happen whenever I talk to people about Welsh history in the Victorian age. They say, "Oh God, must have been gloomy and depressing," and yes, to an extent it was, and the people of North Wales will no doubt about the big strikes and the slate quarries up there. So yes, very hard times, and I will do a future blog and talk about crime in the age generally, but you got to think of the people as people and think of it as how much fun they had as well, and how much they were like us. Okay, so I hope that gives you some perspective of thought, and you may wish to try my books. They're not history books, but hopefully they try and bring some of these people alive. Thank you.